I'm Ashley, and I want to welcome you back to Close Friends. All right, so when I was a sophomore in high school, I became friends with a guy named Tiny. And no, that wasn't his real name. I actually don't remember what his real name was because nobody called him by anything but his nickname. And I remember how great of a nickname it is, actually, right? Well, I guess the nickname isn't that great if you're short or small for your age, but the thing about Tiny is that he was a big dude. Like, he looked like a grown man among teenagers. His dad was in the military, and he moved to my town and started school after Christmas break on our sophomore year. Now, that's not an easy time to transition for anybody, but Tiny handled it great. I'm pretty sure he had been through it a few times before. He was so much fun to be around, and all of us underclassmen loved him because he was bigger than most of the upperclassmen. But as you can imagine, my friend group, which was pretty small, embraced Tiny immediately. And he embraced us. And we all loved hanging out together. But over time, Tiny slowly started becoming friends with an older, more popular crowd. And this made sense. He looked and acted older, and my friend group wasn't exactly the most popular or mature. And eventually, he was just an acquaintance that I nodded to when I saw him and passed him in the hall. One day, my mom asked me about him, like, when's the last time you talked to your new friend? What's his name? I said, Tiny? Yeah, I saw him in the hall today, and I waved, but we don't really hang out like that anymore. And my mom followed up with about 50 questions. Did y'all get into a fight? Did he hurt your feelings? Did you hurt his feelings? No, Mom, we're just in different directions. It happens sometimes. Now, what's the point of this story? Well, in this series, we're talking about what it means to be close friends. But one thing I think we all have to consider in that conversation is this. What do we do when it's time to unfriend a close friend? How do we handle it when friendships drift apart or move in different directions? Sometimes change in a friendship isn't over reasons that are a big deal. Maybe it's something like you just changed schools, which made it more difficult to stay in touch, or schedules changed and now you don't see each other as much, or you've both changed interest, which means you've less in common. Changes like this are difficult, but eventually they get easier to cope with because they make sense. You have a reason that you can explain when someone asks why you're not all that close anymore. But imagine for a second that this shoe is your friendship. Now just go with me, okay? Now sometimes the separation between friends is easy. It's not that big of a deal. Everybody gets it and understands, and the knot of that close friendship is untied in a simple way. But sometimes it's not so simple. There are a lot of different emotions involved. There are a lot of memories. There's history there. Separating from that kind of a close friendship is much more complicated. Still not untied. Because sometimes the reason for ending a close friendship aren't so cut and dry. Maybe you and a friend had a difference of opinions about something you both felt strongly about, and you cared about each other, but neither one of you is willing to make a change. So what happened? The friendship changed instead. Or maybe you had a friend who hurt you with their words or actions, something you just couldn't move on from. And maybe you're the one who hurt them with your words or actions. What happened then? The friendship changed. Maybe you had a friend who started walking a different path, one that you didn't think is good for them or you. You knew that you couldn't be around them when they're making decisions like that. Maybe it's too much temptation for you to make the same decisions. So you had to make a change to the friendship until something changes in their life. Maybe you've experienced this before. Maybe you were the one who initiated the change and it was difficult. You were frustrated and mad at them that they didn't understand why you drifted apart. Or maybe you were on the other end of the story. Someone quit making an effort with you. Maybe you understood the reason, or maybe you had no clue why they stopped talking to you. Either way, you were hurt and it felt like you didn't get closure or an explanation. It just felt like rejection. Wherever you find yourself right now, the reality is many friendships only last for a season. And if you talk to any adults, they will tell you how they've had many friendships that were simply for a season. Sure, some may last a lifetime, but truth be told, that's rare. And it's far more likely that we'll experience friendships that drift or break apart at some point. Friendships have the potential to change for better and for worse. It's a realistic part of life that happens. And sometimes it's the best thing that can happen for ourselves and for our relationships. So how do we navigate close friendships when they change? How do we walk away and handle it well? How do we carry ourselves in a mature way, even when our feelings are hurt and our emotions are involved? Let's talk about it. Now, in the New Testament, the first 4 books are the accounts of Jesus' life when he lived on earth. After Jesus no longer walked the earth, the book of Acts tells us the story about what happened next. It's like the first page in the history of the church. In fact, we gather in church today because of what ordinary men and women started way back then. And it's all recorded in the book of Acts. With Jesus gone, his closest followers, his disciples, began traveling to different places and sharing the life-changing message of Jesus. In the passage that we're looking at today, we have 3 guys, Paul, Barnabas, and John Mark. Paul was one of the greatest Christian influencers of all time. He ended up writing more than half of what makes up the New Testament. His friend Barnabas was a huge encouragement to those around him. In fact, that's why he was given the name Barnabas. It means encourager. Barnabas was also an important financial contributor to the biggest church of his day. And finally, there's John Mark, Barnabas' cousin and the eventual writer of the Gospel of Mark in the New Testament. These guys were getting things done, but it wasn't always easy for them. Check this out. Sometime later, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preached the word of the Lord and see how they are doing." Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, with them, but Paul did not think it was wise to take him because he had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in the work. That was Acts chapter 15, verse 36 through 38. So Paul and Barnabas were friends who were doing some important work together. They were revealing Jesus to the people and establishing churches along the way. But when they decided to go back and check on some of those churches, problems started. Barnabas wanted to bring John Mark, who apparently ditched them at the last time that they were all on this kind of a trip together. And because of that, Paul wasn't so sure about bringing John Mark. He didn't like being stood up before, so why would he want to bring him along again? Could they even count on him? The fact that this story is included in our Bible is so important. It would have been much easier if the writers decided to make everyone look like a hero, or if they just told you the stuff that you were supposed to do or believe when it comes to your faith. That's not what the Bible is. The Bible is a collection of stories about real people who had real disagreements and lived in real tensions. Real close friends who were doing their best to get it right when it comes to following Jesus. So let's see what happened next. They had such a sharp disagreement that they, Paul and Barnabas, parted company. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and left, commended by the believers to the grace of the Lord. He went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. Okay, that was in Acts chapter 15, verses 39 through 41. So listen. Paul and Barnabas were 2 guys who understood the power of showing grace, overlooking offenses, and moving forward. They understood that things would be better if they could come to an agreement. So I'm assuming that they tried to work it out. If we can make peace, we need to try. But if we can't, we need to have boundaries. And that's what Paul and Barnabas did. They decided to go their separate ways. It was a disagreement between friends, a disagreement big enough that they had decided that separating was the best thing to do. When we read the story today, their disagreement may sound petty, but it was a big deal to them. When you think about it, any type of conflict is always a big deal when you're one of the people involved. In fact, maybe you've experienced something similar. Maybe a friendship was strained and people on the outside felt like it was an overreaction. But for you and the friend that you disagreed with, it felt like a very big deal. And what I love most about this story is that it doesn't end in conflict. The writer of Acts goes on to say that the 2 men, Paul and Barnabas, kept going in the important work that they were doing. They kept telling others about Jesus, even though they weren't doing it together anymore. They could have let this conflict in their friendship stop them. They could have let it impact the work they knew they needed to do. They could have stopped talking about Jesus and start talking trash about each other, but they didn't. Both Paul and Barnabas continued spreading the message of Jesus with new people, leading to a doubling of their efforts. Their friendship changed and ended, but they didn't let it end the mission that they shared. And here's what I think that you and I can learn from them. Being a friend means walking away friendly. What it means is you can experience a change in your friendship and still have a positive attitude about the other person. You can, like Paul and Barnabas, have a friendship-ending disagreement while still going on with your life in a way that doesn't impact you or the other person for the worse. Trust me, it's possible. If you're faced with the end of a close friendship, you have the choice to be friendly, even if you're no longer friends. You can still treat them with respect when you're in the same place. You can speak well of them when their name comes up. You can move forward with your life just like they can move forward with their life. The story of your friendship may end, but both of your individual stories will go on, and you can do in a way that still honors what they meant to you at some point. You can move on remembering the best about them, not just the worst. You can move on and not let it ruin you or ruin your reputation by handling it poorly. That's what Paul and Barnabas showed us, that being a friend means walking away friendly. So how do we walk away friendly even in the moments we don't feel like it or think it's fair? Let's start with one simple word: forgive. This one word is a big deal. So if we're gonna choose to forgive, we can start this way. First, identify why you're frustrated. Name your pain. Whether you're upset with them for making the choices that they're making, or you're upset that they no longer talk to you and there's no reasonable explanation, or things just change and it wasn't because of something someone did, take time to figure out why you're upset. Don't try to figure out who's right and who's wrong. Just identify why you're frustrated in the friendship. And next, cancel their offense. Now, this one is difficult, I know it. It might look like letting go of what you think they owe you, canceling the debt and softening your bitterness toward them and the circumstances. It's okay to be hurt or to feel hurt, but don't let your hurt get the final word. As God has forgiven you through Jesus, pass that on to them. Ask God to help you extend forgiveness to them. When we see more clearly how God has forgiven us, God helps us forgive others. Forgiveness is a choice to see God at work. Forgive, and then forgive again, and then forgive again, and then forgive again. Or if the friendship simply changed over time and no one was at fault, it may be realizing that there is no offense to forgive so much as a change to come to terms with. Peter, another person who helped start the early church, said this: "Finally, all of you should be of one mind. Sympathize with each other. Love each other as brothers and sisters. Be tender-hearted and keep a humble attitude. Don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when people insult you. Instead, pay them back with a blessing." That was 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 9. And what is the point? You don't have to continue to be friends, but that doesn't mean you have to become an enemy. You can pray for them, forgive them, be kind to them, speak well of them, and assume the best in them. Being a friend means walking away friendly. It won't be easy, but the person who will benefit the most is you. Imagine the pain that you'll spare yourself by not holding grudges, starting wars, or trying to get even. Seasons change, people change, and close friendships change. Sometimes people simply go in separate directions, and that's okay. But you can do it in a way that doesn't devalue the friendship or the other person. So when you head to small groups, think about your response to this question. What's one way you can walk away from a friendship in a friendly way?